What is going on, everyone? So in this week's video, I want to share something I've learned based on producing this year's zine. And it's interesting because this same thing that I learned also is something that I apply to my own photography. So it's a lesson that crosses over between photography and also the production of the zine. So if you happen to have a copy of this year's zine, I want you to grab it real quick and I want you to turn to a specific page. And so it is going to be this page right here for my Death Valley trip, the rock embedded within the dead desert holly with the title Cradle Song. So for those of you that don't know, for the type in this year's zine, I actually hand wrote it out, I scanned it, then I dropped it into the layout here just because I really like that look to it. And it's kind of a stylistic decision that I've kind of evolved through the years. But the second paragraph here, so I'm going to go ahead and read that. It says, I set up my camera one last time and exposed the final sheet of film that I had with me that day. I returned to my vehicle with a sense of satisfaction, spent one last night at camp, then returned home the following morning. So one thing about this last line of text, home the following morning, I actually physically wrote that in every single zine because it got chopped off. There was this weird issue I had when I had completed the design for the zine and I was ready to create the file that I send off to the print shop. And while reviewing that file before I sent it to them, I noticed that this particular layout went really weird. Like the image was shifted off dramatically and there's just strange things going on. And so in the process of troubleshooting it, I took another layout from within the zine that has the exact same placement of everything, did a copy and paste, and then I dropped in the proper images to it, and then I tried to save the file again, and same thing, it did weird things. It was something strange going on, and by process of elimination, I found out that it was a compression setting for the PDF. So I got rid of that, and sure enough, the layout was fine. I sent it off to the printer, had all the zines printed, and then when they showed up, I noticed this bottom line of type got chopped off because the image box that contains the text was sized ever so slightly differently for the other layout that I copied and pasted. So it was one of those little mistakes that just slipped through the cracks. And I had some other issues, like the first zine I had, there was a typo in it. The second volume, I accidentally cut and paste the same caption over two different pages. It's really hard to avoid that kind of thing, just when you have something that's multiple pages and all that. But since I did the handwritten type as a design choice, it occurred to me that there's a very simple fix, which is for every zine that sells, I'm going to physically write that final line of text in there. And if it wasn't for the fact that me doing this video right now and pointing it out, you would never know that that was actually not as part of the printing, because I found a pen that's just really narrow and it matches it really, really well. So what I want to talk about is my choice of doing the handwritten type in there and how that evolved from one issue to the next. So in the first volume of the zine, I had regular text blocks in there. And what I learned in the process is that this was extremely difficult. It was really hard to, for every single photo, come up with the text for it. Something about seeing that blinking cursor on the screen, judging me with every little blink. And then even if I came up with something where the text was really good, then there might be some weird spacing thing where there's just like one or two words on the last line. That kind of stuff really bugs me. And so it probably took me about 2 weeks to write the type for the first zine, which was just kind of a bit of a pain. And also, there is another, just from a visual standpoint, I mean, sure, the type is nice, but it's, in my opinion, it was too clean. So you have the images, which by the very nature are quite clean, and then the text, which is very clean. Visual contrast is very important, whether it's photography or whether it's design. And so I wanted something that was a bit more interesting for the second zine. And so that's when I started doing the handwritten type. To do that, I had a sheet of paper, I wrote it out. Underneath it, I had another sheet of paper that had lines on it for guides. And I put that on top of a light box. and I would write the text on the computer, and then I just go through and then hand write it on a piece of paper, scan it, drop it into the layout, size everything, and it took a little bit of experimenting to figure out the sizing and all that, but I figured it out. I was pretty happy with it. One thing I tried to do with this one is I tried to justify the type so that the right edge is, the type is flush with the right edge and the left edge. Some of which I was able to do just by writing it, but also after scanning it, I kind of moved some words around. And all this to say that it took a bit of work to do. This year's zine. So my approach on this one, not only am I ragged on the right edge or the type, I also intentionally left some mistakes in there. And also, I did not pre-plan what it was I was going to write. The introduction, the type for the various images, I wrote that as stream of consciousness, just put the paper down and just started writing. And the goal was to embrace the imperfections of the type because I intentionally wanted it to be a little bit rough, because that way you'd have visual contrast to the images that are fairly clean. And not only was it far easier to do, if you compare, it took about 2 weeks to write the type for the first zine. For this one, it took me probably 5 minutes, maybe less, to write each of the captions. Then I scanned it, dropped it in there, and I wrote everything in and had it in the layout in, a couple hours or something along those lines. Now, how does this apply to photography? So it's when you are trying to achieve some degree of perfection that you start fussing around with things. You start questioning things. And because there is no such thing as perfection. So you're going towards a goal that is unobtainable. And so by embracing the imperfections of the design elements here, it was far easier for me to create it. And also, when there was a mistake, it was far easier for me to fix it. And this is how I approach my photography. When I was new to photography, I would definitely be drawn to finding the perfect subjects, the absolutely perfect light, all this sort of stuff. And yes, there is importance to that because you want to have excellent craft when it comes to photography. You don't want to have blatant, horrible mistakes, but the focusing on perfection, I think, takes away from some of the experience in the field. It takes away some of the experience when you're working with that image on the computer. And in some ways, I think it also strips away the parts of the photo that makes it more authentic, that makes it more real. And so as an example from a photography standpoint, this photo right here, which was my favorite from my Death Valley trip, there's really no way I'm gonna get full focus on this subject. So I wanted to have the most important part, which is the boulder in focus. I wanted to have the wall right here in focus, that wall behind it in focus, this wall, the foreground, not in focus. You'd be hard pressed to tell it based on the zine. But just so long as I got the most important parts of the subject in focus, it felt so great being down in that canyon, knowing that I was doing the best that I could, working within the limitations that I had. And I have a sense of satisfaction with this image, even though it is, quote, imperfect, that if I think I was fumbling around with trying to do a focus stack and then the lights changed, I think it would have taken away from the experience in the field. And then trying to put it all together on the software afterwards, I think it really would have just taken away from the experience. So much like that particular photo where I was embracing the imperfection of the scene, making the best choices I can, but not going for perfection. In the same way that creating this zine, embracing the imperfections, going stylistically with a choice where you have the type, which is a bit, I wouldn't say rough, but it's an imperfect sort of look to it compared to the polished image. So unpolished type with polished images. You have this contrast between the two of them in the same way that you have, a contrast between various subjects within a composition. whereas the first photo, polished images, polished type. So it's through the contrast that we create something more interesting. But I do think if you embrace the imperfections of the craft, whether it's design, whether it is photography, it builds a greater sense of being satisfied with your own work. And I think it's more of a long-lasting feeling to that. So just something to keep in mind. And also, if you don't already have a copy of the zine, I've mailed out all of the pre-orders. I still have copies left. I ordered 300 copies of it this year, which is about the same amount as last year. Orders have been a little slow this year, so I still have about 100 of them waiting to mail out if you guys are interested in that. But I want to thank everyone for watching, and we'll see you around next time.